Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Children's Liturgy. It's the third Sunday of Easter. In today's Gospel by St. Luke, we hear how two men are feeling very sad as they're walking back to their village because Jesus had died, and even more confused because they had heard that he had not been in his tomb when the woman went to see him there, and that they said he had risen. And then a stranger appeared among them and told them about the scriptures, and they started to understand. And then he broke bread, and they recognized him. Let's sing our gospel acclamation. Alleluia, alleluia, give thanks to the risen Lord. Alleluia, alleluia, give praise to his name. God, be in my thinking, God, be in my speaking, and God, be in my loving. Our Gospel is from St. Luke. Two of the disciples of Jesus were on their way to a village called Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem, and they were talking together about all that had happened. Now as they talked this over, Jesus himself came up and walked by their side, but something prevented them from recognizing him. He said to them, "What matters are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped short, their faces downcast. Then one of them, called Cleopas, answered him, "You must be the only person staying in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have been happening these last few days." "What things?" he asked. "All about Jesus of Nazareth," they answered, "who proved he was a great prophet by the things he said and did in the sight of God and of the whole people, and how our chief priests and our leaders handed him over to be sentenced to death and had him crucified. Our own hope had been that he would be the one to set Israel free. And this is not all. 2 whole days have gone by since it all happened, and some women from our group have astounded us. They went to the tomb in the early morning, and when they did not find the body, they came back to tell us they had seen a vision of angels who declared he was alive. Some of our friends went to the tomb and found everything exactly as the woman had reported, but of him they saw nothing." Then he said to them, "You foolish men, so slow to believe the full message of the prophets. Was it not ordained that the Christ should suffer and so enter into his glory?" Then starting with Moses and going through all the prophets, he explained to them the passages throughout the scriptures that were about himself. When they drew near to the village to which they were going, he made as if to go on, but they pressed him to stay with him. "It is nearly evening," they said, "and the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. Now while he was with them at table, he took bread, said the blessing, then he broke it and handed it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, but he had vanished from their sight. Then they said to each other, "Did not our hearts burn within us as he talked to us on the road and explained the scriptures to us?" They set out that instant and returned to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 assembled together with their companions, who said to them, "Yes, it is true. The Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then they told their story of what had happened on the road and how they had recognized him at the breaking of bread. The Gospel of the Lord.
So what tree is this?
The apple tree.
It's an apple tree, but how do you know it's an apple tree?
There was apples on it last year.
So although there aren't any apples on it now, you still know it's an apple tree?
Yeah. This is me when I was a baby, and this is how I look now. I look different as a baby, but it's still me.
Although there are no apples at the moment, it is still an apple tree. It just changes at different stages of its life. Just like the girls look different when they were babies to what they do now, so too did Jesus. He had grown as a man with all the stresses that carries, and he had died. And then he was resurrected. He was alive. And in that resurrection, he looked perfect in every way. And perhaps that's why the men didn't recognize him. But they did on the breaking of bread. The men knew Jesus, had witnessed his teachings, heard the woman reporting him to be alive, yet they were uncertain. They expected him to be dead. Jesus revealed himself through the scriptures and breaking of bread. Once the men understood their call to faith in God, they wanted to share this excitement with others. God does things we can't always explain. When things don't always go as we expect, we need to see if perhaps God has a plan for us that is different to what we expect. Jesus came to earth to help us to understand God and to reunite us with God by teaching us from the scriptures. This week, we can have a bedtime story each night from a Bible to understand more about Jesus' life on earth and to help us live good lives as we are asked to. Have a good week, everybody, and I'll see you next Sunday.